Good. How are you?
Oh, good, good. Thank you for taking the time and chatting with me today.
Yep.
And it's so, I mean, you've been on our podcast before with the episodic versions, um, and people probably know you. But for those ones who are jumping in on this episode, why don't you go ahead and give us an introduction?
Yeah. So I'm Govind. I am the CEO of DataX, which is a data sharing company which allows you to share your data and get money, and also see what the data is being used for. We are partnering up with apps. That's our approach. But we also have a Chrome extension that actually collects your browsing information, and we come up with some cool insights with it. We have that going on right now. So if you check out our website at datax.one, you'll be able to find us there. Me personally, my background is in computer science, philosophy, and a minor in economics. I love logic, and I love thinking about how computers and the human mind are similar.
Awesome. I'm pretty sure by saying we have a extension on your browser that gathers all the data. You freaked some people out. Do you want to go elaborate there?
Okay, yes, I should have highlighted the anonymity part of it.
Right, right.
It's everything is anonymous. Like the only actually there's no non-anonymous part. There's only one part to make sure that uh you actually did submit your data, because we pay people, right? So the extension generates a code, and that code is you enter that into our form, and that form says, okay, cool, now we know that you're not scamming us, So yeah, that's pretty much it. Apart from that, we have no way of identifying your data. Although right now our database is on we're using a centralized database. We're going to port this over to a decentralized database, and then from then on we'll just be black boxed away from the data. So
Cool.
now we have some kind of fault tolerance. Plus, it's a little bit of a bootstrapped application.
Right, right. And I'll get to DataX and its mission and all that in a second. But
Mhm.
let's define data first. I mean, I'm pretty sure everybody knows what data is on a conceptual level. But let's get more technical. Okay, so what are we talking about when we're saying data in this context?
So, well, everything you do online, let's start from there. If
Yep.
you open up a website, you're making a request you're filling out a form basically without you even knowing it. You're filling out a form that expects some information just by logging in. You're giving it that information by making a post, making a comment. You're giving some information that's being stored somewhere. So this information is stored as key value pairs, and essentially you can create a whole database out of these things of just key value pairs of lots of keys and lots of individual people submitting rows or lots of values, and how each of these constitutes as a data point. So now this is still a bit of a general idea of data. So to narrow down even more specifically, uh, let's look at, say, healthcare data, where healthcare data could be me specifically, my height, my complexion, my weight, my I guess my body's frame. All this stuff is data, and you can say pretty much everything is data, and almost every single activity. I mean, I would go so far as saying every single activity is that we do is data generating in some way, or data consuming in some other way.
Right, right. Okay, so yeah, data generating. I see. Okay, so let's can you give a couple examples for each of them? Like, what is data? An example of a data generating activity and a data consuming activity, just to put it completely in perspective.
So a data generating activity would be something like, well, just creating a blog post. I'm putting something from my mind, taking all this data out of my mind and then putting that into some kind of feasible form. But if you want to go more literally, me doing a survey, I'm giving a bunch of data that's going to be modeled into something else. So on the consumption side, it would be me going on Facebook and just kind of scrolling through and
Cool.
seeing and just looking at stuff, reading it, seeing stuff I like, and then aggregating it based on what I like better, etc.
Right. Okay. Cool. That I think that puts a lot of perspective on the matter. So we are not
Mhm.
abstract now; we're specific. And
Mhm.
well, how does DataX fit into all this swarm of data, if you will?
So the foundation of internet was built in a very single point way, and by that I mean there's a single server that's just taking everyone's information and then doing stuff with it, which was necessary back then because well, coming up with the internet itself was a pretty considerable feat. But what a byproduct of that, unfortunately, is that it's built into our infrastructure, the internet's infrastructure, that everyone's data just goes to one place, and that one place can decide what they want to do with it. But that's a problem now in the world that we live in, because data is being used for all kinds of things, including verifying whether people should get a loan or not. Whether people in extremities, if you look at a place like China, it actually it identifies you and puts you in a group of people who are threatening or non-threatening just based on what the government's criteria are. So what we want to do here at DataX is act as an intermediary. We give you control of all the data that goes to your apps by partnering with them, and we introduce this whole aspect of researchers who are people who do stuff with data. They consume data and they analyze it, right? So they take your data. We want them to pay for access to your data if you consent to it, and then once they have your consent, they will do exactly what they said they were going to do with it, and then you get to track all of this stuff. This is what we're trying to do at DataX.
Right, cool. So just to be clear, you're not doing anything extra than you do regularly. You're basically consenting, and you are, as a data generating machine, if you will, basically being paid for that data that you're giving to.
Yeah, that's right. And by paid, I mean paid both by money and also by insights. You get to see what
basically.
Yeah, exactly. You get to see what's being done with your data, and you get to learn something new about yourself. That works out too.
True. Yeah, you get some knowledge. That's actually true. So a couple of things it popped to mind. So when you were mentioning loans and how sometimes we're going to define these terms, but machine learning techniques are used to basically decide whether this person gets a loan or not. And some of the concerns that some people in the artificial intelligence community had that I was listening to a while ago, that was sometimes there are these black boxes called artificial intelligence or machine learning algorithms that are basically deciding whether that person gets a loan or not. And well, they're working on contingencies too, but in some cases, you just don't know why that machine made that particular decision. And that's on its face a problem, because that can be on the basis of a prejudice or the fact that you're if you have a specific background, you're more likely not to be reliable to pay that loan off, or which might be actually true, like statistically true, but
but statistically true does not imply like actually true, because I mean ultimately it's just trying to, well, at the very lowest possible level, it's trying to fit your data into some kind of linear model, or even however more crazy it gets, it's trying to fit you into some kind of norm or put you into a box, right? But I do think that's not as much of an issue, at least in Canada, because some of my friends, this is maybe anecdotal, but some of my friends work in quant research, and they're saying that they're not actually allowed to implement models such as neural networks, because those are the ones that actually do all the black boxing. They have to do somewhat like statistical learning or like Bayesian models and stuff, as opposed to actual neural networks. This is as far as I know. I could be wrong.
Yeah, well, I mean, in Canada, it's a different issue, but I was talking about in a more general sense. And at the same time, there are actually, even with neural networks, they're actually working with methods that they can still get information on how this machine decides. So basically, you're implementing a feedback giving system. So you're basically giving it an idea. Okay, explain your thought process. Why did you make this decision and all that? So it's not just that this machine makes a decision and that's it. That's basically the solution they're coming up with. But it actually explains to you why it made this decision, in a sense. Anyway, so getting past that, we threw in these two terminologies. Again, I'm pretty sure a lot of people have heard of them, have a good idea of what they are. But for the sake of being clear and concise on terminologies, do you want to give an explanation on artificial intelligence and machine learning?
So artificial intelligence, I would say, is the superset, and machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence. And by that I mean artificial intelligence is a class of techniques that is used to make a machine solve problems by itself without an algorithm telling it exactly what to do. So there is this notion of probabilistic programming that has come to fore in recent times, which is instead of having like a bunch of if conditions telling you what to do, it's you actually let a computer sample from a distribution. You have something that is attempting to, well, produce something that an acceptor, or there's a guesser and an acceptor, right? So the guesser is what tries to fit in something that the acceptor that fits the acceptor's conditions. And where I'm getting at with this is that there are some very straightforward statistical ways of doing this, and those would be broadly considered machine learning. These would be statistical techniques such as, well, linear regression is the simplest one, where you take a bunch of points and you try to find a line that most of the points are close to or conform to. And then when you get to stuff like neural networks, it gets a little bit more complicated. I don't think you're out of the realm of statistics, but there is definitely a lot of other stuff going on, because you're using a whole bunch of equations to try to approximate this larger equation, this larger equation is what the data is, the true equation that the data itself represents. But you're using all these tiny equations to conform to tiny little bits of this data, or the true equation, that you don't really, you kind of lose sight of what's going on, because all these things just start summing up all such small parts of the equation that you're a little, it's able to recognize much more distinct patterns than the human could, at least.
Yeah.
And
yeah. Go ahead.
Well, and I was also going to add that this is reflected in, I think the biggest way we found out that, well, machines are smarter than us, and at least being able to recognize patterns, is with chess. And the monumental time this was really brought to fore was when Gary Kasparov, like one of the world's best chess players, lost to I think an IBM algorithm. It was cool stuff for humanity.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's actually, yeah, they're really fascinating, and like maybe one of the problems is that they're fascinating too, because we can't stop ourselves from. I mean, I'm not.
It's a little bit of a curse. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Well, and I'm not advocating that we should stop, but it's good to be able to put into perspective, and if need be, not race to, like, not make it an arms race, at least, which can have catastrophic outcomes. Anyways, we're not about dooms and blooms today. Well, I mean, we'll get there, but not at least with AI.
Another day.
That's always in the corner of our thoughts, I suppose. So yeah, something else that you mentioned that I wanted to dig into, I forgot, and that was you get to know a little bit about yourself, and that is so true. It's like basically, well, artificial intelligence, machine learning algorithms are basically these machines that have a great capacity to understand you, and you know you, and then give you that information like anything else. They recognize pattern in an individual as well. Would you agree with this?
Yeah, for sure. I think I mean, as I said, they're able to see super distinct tiny patterns that we're not able to see, even if it's about ourselves. Yeah, it's possible that they can know more about ourselves than we at least we admit to ourselves.
Yeah, you can. Day might come that you would ask these algorithms, these machines, basically, what is the best field of study for me? Consult them on that. It's like, because let's face it, we're not really good at picking our field. Some people drop out. Some people change their major. Some people end up not. There's so few that actually go into it in the beginning, knowing what they want to do and keep doing it, and to get various positions in their jobs or academia or whatever, and keep doing it for the rest of their life. That's not really common in a sense. So, and that's not particularly a problem, but if it could be optimized and become better, I suppose that could be really useful.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's something intrinsically human, but I feel like that's actively diverting the topic, so I'm gonna not do that.
No, that's fine. That's true. It is human, but we could become better humans as well. Like, we could improve. Anyways, so for sure. Back to the topic at hand. So we are doing all these data. We're collecting all these data. We're working with all these data, but there's clearly something that we need to talk about if we're talking about the swarm of these data that are super valuable, because, well, as you mentioned, you can know me better than I know myself, having my data or enough of my data. What if this data falls into the wrong hand? Then a wrong person can know me better than I know myself and can manipulate me to their purposes, to their goals. And wouldn't privacy be an issue here?
Yeah, no, and I think this is really what DataX was born from. I think we did this hackathon, the Ethereum UFT hackathon earlier this year, which is what started this entire company. And what the hackathon was born out of was the idea of the whole Cambridge Analytica thing, where some random app has access to Facebook's data, and not just Facebook's data about the person who did these. They generated some quizzes. Like those BuzzFeed, which Disney princess are you
right.
kind of quizzes. But they not only use that information, but of the people who answer those quizzes, but they also use their friends' information. And they use some crazy modeling to, come up with some kind of political prediction model. So are these people more likely to vote this way or this way, And that's not the point of the conversation. It's just that the fact that this is being allowed is, I don't think that should fly. And again, I think this problem stems out of the internet infrastructure. It started out being under the control of a few people who actually knew how the internet works. Now we're not at that point. A lot of people know how it works. So the infrastructure shouldn't be that same old way. It should be more decentralized. It should be spread out.
Yeah, and I mean, you said that it's not the point, but it sort of is the point, because that has, according to some people at least, that has had so many political implications in the United States and the United Kingdom specifically, but probably even the rest of the world.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, and that's the issue with privacy. That's part of the issue with privacy. I mean, there's so many issues, and we keep hearing. I mean, I don't know if it's our biological nature that keeps paying attention to these negative stories, but I'm not really reading into it. I'm not really knowledgeable. That's why I'm asking you basically. But I keep hearing about these data breaches, and then these problems that we keep having. And the question that comes to my mind, I don't want to make an assumption because I don't know. But the question that comes to my mind is that are we really losing the grasp of our privacy here?
I at this point, with issues like this and global warming, it feels like you've lost already. But I don't think that's the case. Especially with data sharing. Well, okay, there's been hack after hack after hack. Just last week, I think earlier this year, Yahoo had at least 4 billion accounts hacked. 4 billion, which is a crazy number.
Right. No, that's a lot.
Yeah. And then there was a Marriott hack. There was another one which I forget. There's so many that I can't even remember.
Right.
Exactly. But I mean, the point is that data is constantly being generated. So there's still going to be more stuff that's not going to be hacked. And how we get past that is with, I guess, some kind of idea of security. Security is baked into the foundation of the internet, but if I have a password that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, anyone's gonna get it. That's not my password, by the way. That's not gonna fly, right? But I do think that there is more out there in the world than people think there is about the person, about people, and people don't care as much as they claim they do. These are two things I've noticed in this world, and I think both of these should change.
So by people, you mean regular people?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So, but my concern is not. Yes, you're right. People definitely don't care as much as they say they do. But even above that, I don't think they even in what they say they're even saying enough. They're not really saying I care particularly well. Like a lot of people are completely agnostic about whether they care or not. They're not saying I don't care. They wouldn't go out of their way to say that particularly, perhaps, but they're not really saying they care either. And I'm not talking about everybody, obviously. I'm talking about a good majority that does concern me. And you're right. One of the problems is that people use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1 or something like that as passwords, which are like super scary, of course. I mean,
and yeah, I really see a strong analogy with global warming. It's you use all these terrible products that you shouldn't be using. I'm not going to say anything about eating meat, but eating meat from certain factories that really don't care about how they get rid of their waste.
Right.
All these things, it's kind of, you're enabling this, by having shitty passwords, you're enabling people kind of, you're giving this opportunity for people to hack into your systems and just take over your identity,
Right.
I think, that's something that we really need to take control over.
Yeah, and we are so tied in our in today's world with our data. Our whole stock markets in the U.S. at least is based
It's
on our
like, yeah,
internet and data. The whole banking systems, like even if you go out, so if even if you have millions of dollars right now, if there's no bank, you have probably at best, if you have cash a little bit laying around, you probably have at best thousands of dollars. That's it,
right.
and that's the best case scenario because what is money? Before there was a tangible product that we used. We still use, but we usually run based on credit, and then yeah. So I'm giving these examples to say one aspect of it is individual privacy and the fact that some third party agent can know me better than me, which is super scary. And I don't know. Do you agree with me on the fact that somebody else knowing you better than you is super scary?
I think it's okay for a model to know me better than
Yeah,
myself,
yeah, no,
but it depends what it's used for.
and an
That's where I
agent.
would 100% agree with you.
But yeah, so what I'm saying, the good point. So what I mean by somebody, I mean an agent that has an intention, whether that being a human or a machine or whatever, and does something with that knowledge, not just knowing, but actually doing something. And that doing something could be in my benefit or opposed to it. But I mean, obviously, when I'm saying I'm concerned, is that for the case that it might be used opposed. So one simple case is advertising, right?
Right. Yeah.
Which we can get into. But so yeah, I mean, there are so many. So how does this uh, model of DataX and decentralization of internet help us?
So with DataX, we specifically talking about this last point about having a model being able to know you better than yourself and how I should feel about that. I think in most cases, as you said, if it's an arbitrary thing, you don't really know what's going on, then I would be pretty terrified. Like I don't want my information being given
Right.
to that machine. But if it's going to be used for some kind of social good, not necessarily just good for me, but some kind of social good, be it a researcher at the Center for Addiction and Mental Health or a researcher studying modeling GDP so that he can find out how to reduce unemployment, these are things that I would very much like my data to be used for. And on the flip side, I think these are the people who should have access to data that don't have enough access to data. They have the people who do have access to data are like people who are trying to, as you mentioned, advertisers. Like why should advertisers get our information just so that they show us more relevant things that they want us to buy? I mean, I'm not opposed to advertisement in general. I do like seeing some things that are catered to me that's something I might buy, but
Right. Right.
if I want to buy something, I can go out and buy it. I can do some research on it. I don't see the point of all this valuable information. Data is a commodity. It's a commodity, and it's such a personal one. That's how it should be seen, and it should be invested into projects that are worthy, not just some kind of arbitrary junk or like something that's not really doing anything for anyone.
Yeah, but like I'm gonna play devil's advocate here. I'm pretty much on
Hmm.
on your side of advertising, give or take. But I'm gonna play devil's advocate anyways because I want, for the sake of argument, basically. And that is okay. So a lot of these internet companies, specifically like Facebook or Google or a lot of these guys, they are making money and sustaining themselves out of advertising and selling these information to advertisers, etc. So point being, if they don't do that, either they cease to survive, or they will have to start charging people, and then your search engine, your Facebook, and all that becomes subscription based. So you will have to start paying for them, and that's not desirable for anybody either. So how do we compensate for that then?
So again, I'll go back to a little bit earlier when I said this is straight out of the like the infrastructure of the internet. But let's take Facebook as a case study, where Facebook grew as some guy's personal project that just started becoming really really big, and then suddenly just blew up to a billion. I think they have more than a billion, maybe, but
Yeah, I think they
just
have more than a billion. Yeah.
yeah, they have a ton of users, right? So I think for there how it worked. If I watched the movie Social Network, I don't know how true that is, but it seemed like Mark Zuckerberg didn't want to advertise on it. And then at some point he caved because he has all these users, but there's no real revenue stream there, right? He's giving those users some kind of connectivity, but he's not getting anything back. So advertising it's kind of a natural choice because as a brand, I want people to buy into what I'm selling to them. So I have the incentive to actually pay Facebook to put my ad on there. And as Facebook, as I said, I am providing the service to people, and I have so many people on my platform, but I'm not really getting anything for it. So it is a market failure, and it kind of resolved itself. But I think maybe using this data for something good right from the start would have maybe changed things a lot more. Compensating users and taking a little bit of a cut from that. I think that would have been a more stable foundation for the internet. And now we have to strip down what's existing and then do it that way. I think I do see the shift in that direction to how internet apps are how they're gonna be formulated. I don't think it's gonna be about subscription-based services, because I think people in the internet, they care too much about their freedom. As a developer, I can tell you, I can make an app that I can just release for free that will be able to sustain itself. Then why would I have to pay people to? I mean, why would I as a person pay to use a social media platform? I don't. And I'll give a shout out to this social media platform called Steemit. It's built on a blockchain network called Steem. And it's very early stage, and unfortunately, because of all the currency speculation, it's a little bit of a problem. But how this works is you get paid to actively engage and post. Other people stake some of their cryptocurrency when they like or share your posts. Like, you basically get money based on how good your post is, on how good your content is, which I think is a really cool model.
Yeah, it seems that it has some concept of meritocracy built into it. So right. you're getting compensated based on your good ideas, not just you're getting compensated for whatever. Right.
Yeah.
So that's a good idea, I guess. I think I don't know about this particular app and in this social media platform in general, but that concept was interesting to me. And just for the sake of clarity, as Facebook users, as the third quarter of 2018, Facebook had 2.27 billion monthly active users, which is actually huge.
Yeah,
it's a lot of people.
That's almost half the world's population.
Yeah, well, I'm getting there.
Almost.
It's getting there, and I'm looking at the graph right now, which I guess you can't see with the audio, and it's growing. So it'll get there. Anyway, so yeah, you're right. It's again, I was on your side from the beginning as well, but I wanted to argue because I knew that this is some people's argument, and that's a fair question.
For sure.
So, but back to privacy, and okay, so one issue or potential issue is advertisement, but we do have other issues, and I mean, I can go out of my way to make my password super strong, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I have zero control on my first of all, so I'm still active on social media. Some argue don't go on social media, which I don't see as a good solution. It's just more of an escape from the problem. I still do use banks. Banks rely on data, obviously. I don't think anybody can argue against that. And I still use a lot of these services that are out of my control. I have no control over. And now you got me scared. Now give me some good news.
Well, the good news is that there is the new infrastructure for the internet that's being built from scratch, but it's the new infrastructure for the internet, so it's going to take a long, long time. But also, it has been going on since, I think, about 2014. And specifically, I'm talking about apps such as, well, not apps, but systems such as Ethereum and also Steam, as I mentioned. They're gaining traction very slowly because they're
Can you explain what they are?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Ethereum Bitcoin started out as just a cryptocurrency, but Ethereum is a platform where people can host a specialized cryptocurrency for just some app. So think of, say you're using Uber, but it's maintained by the crowd, and there's an Uber coin, or something like that, where there is no one central authority. Maybe there's a cut from each transaction that's used to keep the system alive and to incentivize people to just keep using it, right? But and then you could have something like a social media platform. Again, going back to Steam, that uses that exact same model, right? But getting to the problem side of it, there's too many different so-called blockchain environments or blockchain like platforms, and there's also a huge problem with scalability that's hitting the field right now because they're not nobody's sure if these applications can handle hundreds of millions or billions of people because I think there are some apps that already have or dApps that have millions already, but I'm not sure if there's anything more than that. And there's already a huge bottlenecks in terms of performance.
So there's no absolute proof of concept that we actually can sustain billions of traffic users or whatever.
Yeah, but I think that's more of an engineering challenge as opposed to a research challenge. Okay. So so there are techniques such as database sharding where you just take the database and you kind of cut it to different pieces and then you store those pieces in different places. I've been talking to some teams who are actually doing work like that, and I think the solutions are on the horizon. It's not all gloom and and cynicism.
And also, so you talked about this blockchain technology, and we've talked about it in the past. But again, can we clarify what it is a little bit more in detail?
Yes. So a blockchain, it's a very fancy term. I don't like the usage of the term, but it is what it is. It's essentially a data structure. That's all that it is. It's a data structure that's used for many different parties to form consensus. It's one common, let's call it a state. A state which is composed of different variables that everyone looks, and each time the state changes, at least, depending on your definition of consensus, at least a whole bunch of people who are looking at this database should agree for the state to be transferred. So a state transfer is an expensive operation in this context. So how this helps is that you have some kind of democratization on how let's call these transactions, right? These state changes. So when I say transaction, I bring in the financial connotation, and that you can easily see the obvious use case of it, and which is and Bitcoin is exactly what this is. It's a whole bunch of people who are maintaining a ledger, a distributed ledger. So everyone has access to this ledger, and if the ledger needs to change, then a whole bunch of people need to agree that these changes are valid and they make sense, and nobody's trying to scam the system, right? So the beauty of it being theoretical is that you can all these parts are like plug and play. You can just you can plug in your notion of consensus, you can plug in your notion of state, and you can play around with all these variables. So yeah, that's I think that's a good gist of what a blockchain is.
Cool. You also mentioned something else that you can potentially have these. I don't know. You can call it, like, for example, a new Uber, if you will. And you mentioned that, okay, you have an Uber coin. Okay, so how does this Uber coin thing works? Because, it either has to translate into the real world, or the other alternative would be that you can actually use this Uber coin within the Uber, the new. I mean, again, I'm saying Uber. It's not Uber.
Yeah, it's Uber Prime.
Yeah, Uber Prime, new Uber. So the new Uber coin. It's a mouthful, but. So yeah, you would basically use this credit within the same app, or it would somehow translate to the outside world. What is the model? How is the thinking there? How does that fit in?
Well, with that question, you basically hit the nail on the head with the problem with crypto today. Is because certain apps actually have followed this model of exchanging it to currency, and when you do exchange, you're basically being like, hey guys, come here, speculate on my currency and do stuff with it. Right. So that's exactly what's happening. That's why crypto markets are pretty poor right now. Not right now. There's just so much stuff going on, but that's one of the reasons. But that's the problem with opening it up to exchanging it with different what we call fiat currencies. Fiat currencies being something like the Canadian dollar or something issued by a central bank. But there is this notion of a utility token, which is a token that's only meant to be used inside the platform. And then there's active research being done by even the Bank of Canada, the different central banks around the world that's actually trying to find a way to stably transfer these tokens these digital assets to other digital assets. And there are some apps that are trying to do it. DataX at this point is not going to use any cryptocurrencies. We will only be using fiat currencies or traditional currencies. But I think this is an interesting notion of a stable coin or a stable token, and I think that having this will ultimately be what causes the shift towards blockchain-based applications.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds really promising. I mean, we'll see how that pans out. But
Yeah.
the horizon, the opportunities seem immersed. Like, seems a lot of opportunities potentially. So
Right.
we talked about so many problems that we are basically tackling head on with this new technology, and we were basically solving those problems, or at least attempting to, or parts of them. So data privacy being one of them. However, do you see further horizons that all of this can be used to solve some other potentially physical problems that we have in the world? I mean, there are so many of them, from famine to poverty to climate change to violence, or any other area that you can actually point out and name or think of. Is there? Do you see this? Because it seems to me that it's a very powerful tool, or I don't know if you can actually qualify it as a tool, but do you see this potential, and if you do, how?
Well, I think I do agree with your intuition that these are all data-driven problems. Again, I maybe if anyone thinks I'm wrong in saying that everything we do is data-driven, everything, not pretty much everything, but actually everything we do is data-driven, it naturally follows that there is data available on famine, and then if you're able to use that data and you're able to do some kind of analysis on it, you'd be able to come up with the principal components of what causes famine in a certain location with a certain situation, a certain political situation, and so on, etc. And you'd be able to model this phenomena, and then maybe you'd be able to start measuring it. You'd be able to start tweaking. What if I do this? Does this reduce famine? You see where I'm getting at? You'd be able to apply these models on it, and you'd be able to tackle these problems head on. But the important thing there is you need access to the data, and you need to be able to measure these things, right? I think that's the biggest challenge, or I guess even the starting point of how you get by there. And I mean, there's a lot of great NGOs doing this kind of work, and charitable organizations that are doing exactly this.
So yeah, basically we want to use that data to educate ourselves, or start learning what are the root causes of each of these individual problems, and what are the potential solutions, and use again similar simulations to see whether they actually do affect the problem. So basically, that's the idea, right? Am I?
Yeah. Data-driven solutions to data-driven problems that haven't been looked at that way before. It's there. You can reduce famine to some kind of an optimization problem.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. And I do agree with you that if not everything, pretty much everything boils down to data.
Right.
Yeah, and that's a lot of. So okay, now let's get to the real stuff. So if I'm interested right now to start giving you my data and get to know myself better, and also contribute to a bigger picture, how do I do that for DataX specifically?
For DataX, I think going to our website, signing up for our pilot project is going to be the best option. It's right on our website as datax.one, datax.one. You go there, you should see subscribe to our pilot, and you just follow the process there. That'll get you into our beta testing group, and I think our beta testers are going to be very held closely to us, because we're early stage, and we're going to appreciate anyone who supports us. And what's next? Well, we'll follow up with your insights, and of course, there's a $5 compensation. You receive $5 to $10 depending on how much data you contribute, which is just the extension is just you click a button, and that's all you have to do. So if you keep the button clicked for an entire week, for example, you would probably get $10. But as soon as you click it, you get $5. That's guaranteed. And additionally, we will put our team data scientists to work over the Christmas break and make him get a bunch of insights out of this data. So you get to find out some cool stuff about your internet browsing activity. Nice. It's kind of tame, but it's a good starting point.
Right. Yeah. So I mean, I was going to ask you to explain what's happening. Like, what am I getting out of with the first pilot project, which you sort of did? Do you want to add anything to it?
Well, sure. What we are collecting is basically browsing history, the bookmarks, top websites visited, any information that your browser collects automatically. We're just tapping into the browser's data collection, which any other extension would collect. You know, you can see things like what's on the website you're currently on, but those require like higher levels of access, and we're not going that crazy.
But what sort of assurances that I have that you're not really going that crazy?
Well, when you sign up for our pilot, you will see a liability notice, so you can actually take us to court if you think that we're doing something bad.
Okay.
You know, so yeah.
All right,
Like we really we really don't want to be on the bad side of data collection.
No, I know. I'm just basically trying to.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a very valid question.
Okay, you know, I'm trying to contribute, and I want to be comforted. That's why I'm so what I'm.
And I'm here to comfort you, man.
Yeah. So what I'm thinking is that whether myself or some of our audience here are gonna hear these, and I'm thinking what would be the concern of any single individual, and I'm trying to ask, or not every single individual, but genuine concerns that might arise. So I'm just asking you these. And another thing that so you are right now sticking to the browser data. You're not going crazy further than that, right?
This is only for our private data collection. I mean, as in people directly giving data to us. We are also partnering with existing apps. And how this is going to work is the user who's using this app will get a notification saying, hey, do you want to give data to so-and-so study? If they say yes, then we'll port over their profile and their data and make it available to a researcher. Everything can be tracked online. We have just one partner right now who is a meditation application called Mobio. I think their app is called Wildflowers, actually. And what they do is basically it's really cool. They make you take 30-second selfies, and those selfies record your stress levels. They give you a meditation regimen, and you can actually track how you're. Okay. Yeah, and
I'm joking. Okay.
You don't want to look at yourself for that long.
Yeah. I think it's gonna be awkward.
Yeah, but I think what they do with it is well worth it because it's you get to track how your stress reduces directly because of meditation. And they've already released 2 randomized control trials based on the information from their app. And I think right now they're targeting mainly users who have terminal sicknesses and mental health issues. So they're doing some really good work.
Yes, fair enough. No, I was just making a joke. It's 30 seconds, definitely not that bad. I think people cumulative. Yeah, if you add them up, people spend much longer in front of their camera, taking selfies, not looking at their phone.
Sure.
So yeah, that wouldn't be an issue. All right, man. Is there anything we left out of the conversation that you want to talk about?
Well, I think we talked about everything under the sun, man.
Yeah, we talked a lot. We talked about a lot of good stuff, and
great discussion.
They're definitely gonna follow this up with you. I'm really interested in this area because I believe. Well, I mean, whether this is successful or not, I'm not talking about your company. I'm talking about the whole idea of decentralized internet, which I cannot see why eventually wouldn't be, but whether it would be or not is irrelevant. It's at the cutting edge right now, and it's so super exciting. I have one final question for you, however. I do understand that there are going to be consequences of this whole thing that are not anticipated, no matter what you do, and we're going to have to deal with it later. But I'm going to bring us back to our previous generation, to social media. I'm pretty sure people who, created Twitter, Facebook, let's stick with Twitter for now, we're not really anticipating all these sometimes mob behavior on Twitter, these irresponsible people who are violent, who are aggressive, who go after you. And a lot of people are concerned about what social media is doing to our societies. And I think this is just a new medium that we're basically adapting to. But what are you doing anything to foresee these concerns that might arise? I mean, I'm pretty sure there are going to be, no matter what you do, there are going to be something that none of us can foresee at this point. But are you doing anything for those concerns, or is there part of your plan?
Well, it's specifically about people kind of mobbing up in that sense of and how they do on the internet.
No, that mobbing was just an example of what the problem became the problem of social media that nobody was anticipating, and it became as a new medium, basically.
Right. So I think that this is uncharted territory for humanity as a whole. And I think I can't say anything about how I see it going, because it's this is the first time we've had social media, and it's less than 20 years old. I mean, it's about 20 years old actively, with a huge following. So I can only say it's a wild ride, and I think it's only going to get wilder. But I think we should at least try to control it or do something good with it, even though we won't be able to control a lot of things. If we at least use this to do something good, I think that's at least trying.
And don't get me wrong, I don't mean social media is bad. I'm an
yeah.
active
No,
user.
I think I see exactly what you mean. It's not about the badness. It's more about just like, this is the first time everyone in the world really has one place to connect with each other. And it's super unpredictable what can happen with that kind of power.
All right. Yeah, that sounds good. We covered a lot. All right, man. Thank you for being on our show again. It
was a pleasure. I love this discussion, and I look forward to showing up sometime in the future.
Oh yeah, when you hit some strides, we're gonna. I'm pretty sure a lot of our audience will join you, and they're gonna want to hear more about what you do. So definitely. All right, have a good one. Thank you very much.
You too, man.
Take care.
Thank you.